Welcome back to the Content Clubhouse podcast presented by The First Call. I'm Nathan Moore, and I'm really pleased to be bringing to you guys a unique conversation this week, not with a content creator, but actually with one of their managers, Noah Schwartz, founder and CEO of Touchgrass Sports Agency. He gives us the lowdown on what it's like to represent these creators in this Wild West media landscape that we find ourselves in. No, he's not Jerry Maguire, but he does a lot of really cool stuff behind the scenes to bring the public the content that we're so used to seeing from our favorite golf content creators. So without further ado, here's the conversation with Noah.
We're back for another episode of the Content Clubhouse podcast. Got a different angle for this one this week. We've heard from some of the golf content creators that are reshaping the game and producing the video and photo and social content that we all know and love. But this week, really excited to hear from one of the talent managers making it all happen from behind the scenes. Surely somebody's got to be helping these people out, right? Like it can't all, it's got to work presumably from a business perspective, like a normal athlete-agent relationship. But who knows? We're about to find out. And to get all those questions answered, we're very pleased to welcome in Noah Schwartz, founder and CEO of Touchgrass Sports Agency. Noah, we've worked with each other plenty of times to get some of your clients connected with my clients and basically make the content machine roll on. So thanks so much for making some time to explain it all to us.
Of course. I'm happy to be a part of it and support you and give some background on the community.
Yeah. So I'm sure you must get this question all the time. And so I'm sorry, hand up to add to it here, but whether it's from mom or your aunt or family or whoever, when they ask you, what exactly do you do for a living? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, that's a funny one. It depends on the mood I'm in and how specific I want to be. When I'm talking to people in the industry, it's pretty simple. I'm a manager dealing with everything kind of that goes on in the talent's life. So majority of my clients, as we mentioned, are content creators in the golf space. So handling everything from their schedule to their content production and their scheduling around that, and then kind of a discourse around that to the brand and opportunity side, to working with folks like yourself and planning events and opportunities and shoots for specific organizations or properties, to developing unique IP and concepts, right, with the clients. So from clinics to businesses to merchandise to podcasts and everything in between, helping them ideate, construct, and then use the connections that I have to actually build and operate the business, and the experience that I have to take a strong role in the operation of those businesses. That's the long answer. The short answer I would normally say is I'm an agent, and that's pretty much it, even though it's not so simple because I'm not actually an agent. I'm a manager. In this space, the lines tend to be a little bit blurry. In traditional talent, actors, actresses, musicians, etc., there is a much more clear delineation between what an agent does and what a manager does.
Yeah, that brings up a really great point about kind of the difference between the industries, so to speak. Golf content, at least from my perspective in the work that we're doing, really feels a little bit like the Wild West. Like it's pretty new. So in terms of how it's regulated, how it works, best operating procedures, how to go about doing this, that, and the other, it kind of feels like we're all figuring it out as we go along. Would you echo that sentiment?
100%. I was having a conversation with another co-founder, not in the agency space, but in the golf space last week. And one of the things that I was mentioning to him, and he kind of reiterated my sentiment, was that golf is going through a pretty rapid evolution right now in terms of like where people consume their content, who plays the game, how people look and feel while they play the game. It's all changing very rapidly. And really, it's been the last, call it 7 to 8 years, and probably will continue over the next 7 to 8 years. Prior to that, golf didn't change very much, right? The technology, all that. So yes, what I think went first was apparel. It's the lowest hanging fruit, right? Companies like Malbon, Eastside Golf, For All, etc., started popping up, changing the way that the golf consumer looks, right, and dresses when they're on the course, and making golf and street style kind of combine, right, and become quote unquote cool. And then now what I think is going next is media, and the way that we consume golf is kind of going through that evolution. I think eventually, and I think it's kind of happening as well currently with TGL, with different types of like 5-irons, indoor golf communities, and different structures that will continue to evolve as well, kind of coinciding with the media component. So yes, it is the Wild West, because there is a small group of individuals making a lot of change on an industry that hasn't really changed in a long period of time. Now, who still makes the most money in the space? The top players on tour, right? That's never going to change. If, name your high-level content creator who's also a good golfer. If you asked them, I would be really hard-pressed to believe that they wouldn't trade it all to be top 10 in the world, right? And if they could, they would. In this space, there isn't any regulatory bodies. There aren't any, constraints on what you can and can't do. It's really about what the consumer, the viewer, will grab onto and resonate with, and running with that. And then leveraging and working with the powers that be, the tour, live, opportunities like TGL and big brands, etc., to produce, to leverage both of your networks and both of your capabilities to produce really cool and neat, game-changing IP, whether it's at the lowest level, like one of the business we're working on with one of my clients right now is literally grassroots clinics, right? All the way up to TGL, right? Producing a new way that we watch and consume golf. So yeah, I would say it is the Wild West, and it's evolving pretty rapidly.
Definitely. I mean, you talk about the golf industry being in this, I guess, evolutionary era. What made you want to specifically hone in, I guess, on golf and the work that you do? Of course, you do have non-golf clients, but I know you're an avid golfer. You love the game, and it seems like the majority of the people you do work with are in that golf space. Would you say that's born more out of your personal passions for the game, or is it almost from a business perspective, like, yes, I actually see golf as being the fastest growing sector of all the businesses that I could be in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I would love to sit here and tell you that I'm some tactical genius and was like, I know this space was going to pop off and this is where I needed to be. It wasn't so calculated. My best friend from college, so to quickly back up, I started a business while I was in college in which we, the simplest way to put it is we booked talent, to keep it short and sweet. We had an online platform where you could book talent for corporate engagements, mainly keynote speaking. Through that, I was our COO and our head of talent, and managed and ran with all of the talent relationships that we had. We were a small team, so really everybody wore every hat. But through that, I built a lot of strong relationships and cut my teeth managing and dealing with talent. So much so that on the side, while I was still, actively running a company that's called Engage, or is called Engage, I started managing talent directly and exclusively. Where that kind of evolved into golf was one of my roommates from my time at USC started a golf content creation account in 2021 called Short Game King, and that account blew up in 2021 terms to over 100,000 followers within 6 months. At the 2-month mark, we had a conversation, and he was basically like, look, I think I'm growing rapidly. Will you manage me? At that point, I'd never managed a creator. The only golf experience I had was booking golfers from Engage. So I really used that as a springboard. And through there, because it is, like you said, a significant personal interest of mine. I'm growing up playing the game. I love the game. COVID wasn't what got me into the game, right? I think that is for a lot of people. And through that, I've organically kind of just waded my way through the business, looking at other avenues as well. But I've found that as I've been in the golf space since 2021, or in the golf creator space since 2021, there's been an explosion, right? It's gone faster than we could have imagined. companies like Good just raised almost $50 million last week. Like, that is unheard of, in such a quick period of time. And it would have been silly for me to start looking elsewhere, especially as I, really started to create inroads. So there was definitely a rigidity on my end around, okay, don't go too far outside of this lane, stay specifically in sport, and then hone in on golf. Also too, golf's a small industry, as you know, right? And as I'm sure as a lot of people you talk to know. So as I continue to build those relationships, I can become a critical player that's helping to shape the way this golf content creation space evolves and takes on a new form as the traditional players start to kind of like grasp onto it.
Definitely. So and you brought up your origin story, for lack of a better term, and definitely want to get to that because it is very interesting and certainly unique. But to stick with a little bit of what you have been doing over the last few years, specifically in the golf space, with the creators that you work with. So you said your short and sweet answer, right, was like, I'm an agent. People have an idea in their mind of what that might look like in other industries, whether you've watched Entourage and imagining those crazy guys, or for me personally, Jerry Maguire is like the first thing that comes to mind. Can you just walk us through a little bit of whether it's day to day or just kind of consistent responsibilities you find yourself tackling with your clients? And I guess another way of thinking about that is when you approach a creator, what is it that you tell them that, hey, I'm Noah Schwartz and this is what I do for you?
Yeah. So I'm not going to share the whole pitch because I think it's a little bit different than what others take on, which, again, given my background, I do take a different approach. I keep a smaller roster, but that leads into what I do on a day-to-day. And so on the day-to-day, there's what I like to kind of categorize it as like things we do that play offense and things we do that play defense, right? So, I'm a sports person in general. So on the defensive side of the ball, we are generally managing projects that we're actively working on, right? So you and I are sending, a group of creators out to, Giants Range. And, we are working on activations on that. I'm responding to emails, coordinating with the clients in order to make sure that they have everything that they need, making sure travel's in order, tracking it all in my system that's shared between the two people. On a grander scale, defense could be, working with a client on something that they're actively considering, but not necessarily doing currently. So say I mentioned the clinic idea earlier. When we were still ideating on that, right? I would say playing defense is client comes to me with this concept. Sure, let me hear you out. Let me talk about it. Now, after I just, kind of mold over that information, I can go play offense and ideate on how can we make this into a business? Where can we take this? Come back to them with a business plan about what it actually might look like. Additionally, getting in touch with new critical folks in the space, which is what I'd consider to be offense, right? So, hey, I have a client who, really needs a launch monitor partner, right? Let's both leverage the relationships that I have and also go find new ones to convince and to educate on why X client would be a great fit for name your golf launch monitor partner, right? And actively learn about what that partner is doing and how we can potentially slide into how they work. Additionally, the day-to-day consists of phone calls for the most part. Being on the phone, whether it's with folks like yourself playing defense on current opportunities, whether it's with prospective clients playing offense to kind of like, conjure some things up, whether it's with purely informationals, right? Networking opportunities. I would say like an example of this is, for me, would be like Pro Shop, right? Not a relationship I had super active, didn't really know anybody until about 6 months ago, hit up people. And now have just kind of, since I built a relationship with one of the key folks over there, touch base every month and a half or so, just to see 2 months, just to see what's going on, right? Is there anything that could work well? Additionally, team management. So I have a team that I guess that's the last thing I forgot to mention would be, managing that team, right? And making sure that they're empowered to do some of the things that, we need to do, whether it is, some of the outbound emails I'm talking about, organizational, administrative things, finance and accounting, kind of actively running the business itself more than just managing clients, right? And then the last thing is planning and, strategizing, forecasting, thinking about where we can go next, looking at what other opportunities are coming out in the space and how we can really build something new here.
Very cool. So when it turns in terms of day-to-day kind of communications with your golf content creators specifically, since ultimately this is the content clubhouse, we're going to try to keep it closer to golf if we can. I guess the most simplest way of asking this question, I guess, is do you ever get asked for like almost creative input in what they're doing? Is it more they come to you and say, hey, I'd love to have a launch monitor. Can you make this happen? Or is it a mix of both?
Great question. So in traditional Hollywood, the manager would, right, be kind of involved in like, hey, I'm going to read this script and I don't think this fits your 10-year goals. We're going to put the kibosh on this, right? None of my creators, I don't think the golf space in general is quite there, right, for us to just put the kibosh on things. So generally as we lower it down, right, to where we're playing at, I do not provide creative support unless asked. So I have a few clients who run and do what they need to do whenever they need to do it. I allow them, they allow me to do my job and them to do theirs, right? Because if I was a content creator, I'd be a content creator, right? I'm not a content strategist. I think I have actually made some recommendations to creators that I manage in the past to say, hey, let's go find a content strategist, somebody who's going to download, use a software, really understand your audience, take a download on your content, and then make recommendations. At the highest level, I can do. Getting more granular, that's just not me, right? That's just not who I am. And so I provide it when asked. And that's, again, one of the differences in my pitch is I think some managers, agents will come to their clients and say, I'm going to make recommendations about how you're going to change your content and it's going to lead to this, this, and this. I think that's a recipe for failure. Pretty 9 out of 10 times for managers, because you're going to tell a client what to do and it's not going to work. And then they're going to blame you and then they're going to fire you. Or you are not going to, or you're going to tell a client what to do, it's going to work, and then it's going to stop working. And then they're going to ask you for a new recommendation and you're going to give them something that doesn't work. And then they're going to fire you. And so it's sort of like, and it might work 6 times in a row, and then the 7th time it doesn't work, and then they're going to fire you. So it's pretty, it's a slippery slope to start making those recommendations, in my opinion, unless you did come up as a content strategist and walked your way into management. I have a colleague who works at a large sporting goods company and ran their marketing division, has content strategy background. Okay, when her clients ask her for content strategy, makes total sense. I come from the operational side of a business, right, which I know we just said we'd get into. So when my clients ask me to help them build a clinic, merch, apparel, product, IP business, that's more where I feel stronger, that I can provide recommendations, whereas my colleague might not, and she might find somebody who can fill that role, just like I would help them find somebody who can fill the content strategy.
Yeah, on the subject of other managers, I'm so curious how those relationships work, because I would say golf content creation, and admittedly I'm a bit pigeonholed into that side of it. So it's not like I'm consuming a ton of other content out there, but basically maybe it's just the nature of the game. Golf is a whole lot more fun with more people, right? So very rarely are these creators making a living off of playing by themselves, right? They're partnering with other big time creators who more often than not probably have other management representing them. I'm just curious how these opportunities come about. Is that more talent to talent, or are you constantly kind of in touch with other managers saying, hey, I bet this would be a great fit, or they're bouncing ideas off of you? And just how do you manage those relationships, given the fact that technically on the surface too, you're kind of going after the same pool of creators in terms of your own business?
It's a balance for sure. On the okay, my YouTube creator wants to go do a match with this other YouTube creator. That is kind of a case by case tackle it thing. For example, if I know that that individual is represented and the talent has no relationship with the other talent, okay, I'll go to that other individual and try to coordinate that relationship. It's all cordial. So to back up just a second, I think the biggest thing is that the space is real small and really nascent, right? It's super early for us to consider having true competitors and true, maybe disdain or dislike for other people in this space, because unfortunately or fortunately, we got to work together. Because even this week, right, I had another prominent manager in this space come to me with an opportunity for one of the clients that I manage, because he couldn't pair it with one of his clients, right? But he didn't want to give up the opportunity. So he said, oh, you know what? I know Noah represents this individual. Like, do they interest you? And then obviously, yes, he comes to me with the opportunity and it's all great, right? It's perfect, and vice versa. So I don't think there's any point in burning bridges, being territorial as it comes to these kind of things. That can come back to bite me, right? But that's just my philosophy. On the production side, typically that's left more talent to talent, because that is more informal, and the nature of this content creation is informal, right? Even when you watch Bryson's videos, he's a 2-time major champion, right? There's still a real informal nature to it, right? And that is how it should be. And so I don't feel it's in the best interest of the talent to say, hey, I'm going to go DM, or not DM, they would DM. I'm going to go email Joey Coldcuts and Fat Perez's manager because I know them, right? And I'm just going to reach out. I think if one of my clients wanted to work with them, it's much more in their interest to shoot them a DM and open up the warm introduction, and as opposed to, kind of going through the more traditional channel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And having spoken to one of your clients, Ashton Gollan, earlier, him talking about kind of the way, that informality, like getting DMs from Wilson Golf. And he's just like, I don't know, I guess I just thought it would seem more official than that. But it's just like, that's just the way this industry works, especially in the creation space, which I think is very interesting.
So you'd be surprised. I think, as I've touched on a little bit, it's pretty similar in other spaces, like in the kind of representation, talent and representation space in general. There is a kind of like throw it at the wall and see what sticks mentality. It's not, hey, rinse and repeat, this is how we're going to do it. I'm Wilson Golf and I'm going to come to you with a very formal proposal. It's meeting creators where they are. It's meeting talent where they are, which I think is smart on the brand's end, for the record, right? It's I'm not going to get the same reaction if you send an email and then it comes to me and I'm kind of going through the vetting process, right? As if you just DM Ashton and show him, hey, we love you, dude. You're great. And vice versa, right? It's not just brand to talent, it's talent to brand too. And then Ashton says to me, hey, Wilson just reached out. How do I go about handling this, right? And we manage that together, right? And so that is definitely the informal nature of the space that can, as you were mentioning about the day-to-day earlier, can create kind of headaches for people like me, because it's like you're getting it from all different avenues at all different times. But it's also beautiful because you're meeting the creator where you're meeting the talent where they are.
Very cool stuff, and honestly, very eye-opening stuff. Even though this is like our 10th conversation together, more or less about the same thing, I feel like I learn something new every time I talk to you. But before we get you out of here, I did mention kind of your origin story, because it is just incredibly unique, your ties to Engage, and more specifically, Jake Olson, who was, at the time, for those that don't know, blind long snapper playing on the USC football team. One of the most inspiring stories kind of in college football as of late. Just walk us through just kind of how that got started and how that served as a takeoff point for you in your career.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Jake, well, first of all, the real USC, University of Southern California,
Yes,
not South
in agreement
Carolina.
there
For
with the
those that
Georgia
may be
Bulldogs thing behind me.
confused,
Total
yeah, for those
agreement.
that may be confused, so I graduated from school from USC. Jake and my other co-founder Daniel of Engage were a year older, or are a year older than me. Were a year older than me in school. And to back up, Jake lost his eyesight to bilateral eye cancer. Has initially as an infant, and then officially as a 12-year-old. And so, the last place he actually had sight was in USC's locker room when Coach Pete Carroll was addressing the team, and Jake kind of had a really amazing experience with at the time one of the most legendary football teams that's gone ahead. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking. To fast forward, Jake gets to campus, joins the football team under Coach Sarkisian and later Coach Helton, and goes on to snap in a game for the first time. I met Daniel, who was Jake's roommate, actually through Sports Business Association at USC. So he and I were both very interested in the space that I now play in, and kind of joined clubs and activities as a result. After Jake snapped in a game for the first time, he was getting flooded with requests to keynote speak, to come and inspire and really deal with finding the setup and the setback, which is his tagline. And so as a result, the three of us realized, as we were business students, entrepreneurship students, hey, there's an opportunity here to build a platform that handles this process. That's what Engage became, is a Airbnb style platform to manage the process of both inbound and identifying new requests for keynote speakers and corporate appearances for high level talent, instead of getting DM'd, having people reach out to USC's communications department trying to get him to speak. Jake has a twin sister. She was getting DMs, right? Being like, hey, can you coordinate Jake coming to keynote speak? So that was really my introduction to talent management. Jake was my first client per se, even though he wasn't really. And the evolution of Engage is what kind of gave me my business experience. To put a bow on the Jake story, Jake is also an incredible golfer. He is I don't know if even you knew this, Nathan. He is a B1 blind golfer, so the highest level of blindness. He has no sight, no light, nothing. He's won the B1 blind championships 2 consecutive years in the United States. He competed in the blind version of the Ryder Cup. It's called the Vision Cup, where the best blind American golfers and the European golfers compete. Wow. He went over to, I want to say Austria, I can't remember exactly, last summer to compete. He hits the ball like 325. He knows. Of course he does. He can play draws and fades. He can watching him read a putt and then argue with me about where the putt is going to go is genuinely impressive. He competed in the USGA put on their inaugural Adaptive Open in, I believe it was 2022. And he competed in the inaugural and then again last year. So 2 of the first 3. It's tough though, because, he has no eyesight. Other people have no arms, no legs, and those are absolutely incredible, but each impairment's a little different. Mm-hmm. So he didn't necessarily perform as well as he would like comparatively. He still shot in like the low 80s, but, comparatively. So he's an absolutely incredible golfer. He doesn't keep a handicap, but if he did, he'd probably be like an 8. So he's real good. But yeah, that's the story of Jake and kind of how, he and I, my first introduction, I guess, to the golf space was through him.
Well, very, very cool, man. And again, thanks so much for taking some time to kind of take us through what you do and learn a little bit more about kind of where this industry is, where it's going. If you can even call it an industry, I think it's evolving and changing every day, all the time. But excited to see where it goes and have no doubt that you'll be a big part of it going forward. So appreciate you coming on, and we'll be in touch.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.